If you've ever added up your savings at midnight, then added them up again an hour later, hoping the second number would somehow feel different than the first, this story is for you, because the number never changes. What changes is what you believe it's supposed to give you. Today, I want to tell you about a merchant who owned more than any man in his province, and a monk who owned almost nothing at all, and the single evening when their paths crossed on a dusty road outside a market town. The merchant asked the monk a question that most of us are afraid to ask out loud. The monk's answer was 7 words long. Those 7 words followed the merchant for the rest of his life. We'll get to them. But first, you need to understand what the merchant was running from. Before we go further, tell me in the comments, what's the number in your head, the one you think would finally make you feel safe? Don't be embarrassed to say it. You'd be surprised how many people are carrying the exact same number and how few of them have ever said it out loud. The merchant's name was Farid, and by the time he was 40, his name was known in 3 kingdoms. His caravans crossed deserts that swallowed lesser men. His warehouses in the coastal city held silk from the east, spices that made kitchens smell like festivals, and enough grain to feed a small army through a hard winter. He had built all of it himself, brick by brick, deal by deal, starting as a boy who carried water for other men's camels because his own family had none. He remembered that boy often, not with tenderness, but with a kind of dread, the way you might remember a house fire you barely escaped. That boy had gone hungry twice in one winter. That boy had watched his father bow his head to a moneylender and apologize for a debt he could not pay. Farid had promised himself somewhere in that cold season that he would never again feel what his father felt in that room. And so every coin he earned afterward was not really about the coin. It was a brick in a wall he was building between himself and that memory. The trouble was the wall never felt finished. At 20, he thought a certain amount of gold would do it. He earned it, and the fear did not leave. At 30, he thought it was land. 3 farms, then 5, then 11, each one a fortress against the past. The fear only learned to speak in a lower voice. By 40, he owned more than he could count without his stewards, and still, some nights, he woke in his silk bed with his heart pounding exactly the way it had pounded in that cold house as a boy, as if nothing had changed at all except the softness of the sheets. His wife had stopped asking him to slow down years ago. His sons had learned to schedule their conversations with him around his ledgers. He told himself this was the cost of security and that his family would thank him later once the wall was finally, truly complete. He never let himself finish the sentence that came after once. It was on a caravan route, 3 days from the nearest city, that Farid's horse went lame and his party was forced to make camp early near a small monastery built into the side of a dry hill. The monks there kept almost nothing: a well, a garden of hard vegetables, a hall for sleeping, and silence. Farid, restless and irritated at the delay, wandered out at dusk and found an old monk named Devaram sitting alone at the edge of the garden, watching the light change on the stones. Devaram had once been wealthy himself, not as wealthy as Farid, but wealthy enough in his younger years to have owned 3 houses and to have felt, for a while, that owning them made him a different kind of man than the man who owned none. Almost no one in the monastery knew this about him. It was not a story he told, only a story he had lived through and let go of, the way a snake leaves its skin on a rock and moves on without looking back. But what Farid didn't know, as he sat down uninvited beside this quiet old man, was that Devaram would recognize the exact shape of his hunger within the first 5 minutes of conversation. He had worn that same hunger once, like a coat that never quite fit. "You have the eyes of a rich man," Devaram said without turning his head. "And the shoulders of someone still running." Farid laughed, more sharply than he meant to. "I've stopped running. I own 11 farms, 4 warehouses, and a house with more rooms than I've ever slept in. I built an empire out of nothing." "And are you finished?" the monk asked. The question landed strangely. Farid opened his mouth to answer and found he had no answer ready. He had a number in his head, always, endlessly, a number just slightly larger than whatever he currently had. But he had never once asked himself if there was an end to that number, or if it simply kept moving away from him like a shadow at noon that lengthens the moment the sun begins to drop. "Not yet," he admitted. "Soon." "How will you know when it's soon?" Devaram asked. And this is where everything changed. though Farid wouldn't understand that for several more hours. They sat together as the light dropped lower over the hills. Farid, unaccustomed to silence, found himself filling it, first with boasts about his caravans, then, as the boasts ran dry, with something closer to the truth. He told the old monk about the winter his father had bowed his head to a moneylender. He told him about the boy who carried water for other men's camels. He told him, though he had never told anyone, that some nights the fear still came for him in his sleep, dressed exactly as it had been dressed 30 years earlier, only now it wore silk too. Remember this detail. It matters later. Devarim did not look surprised by any of it. He only nodded, the way you nod at weather you've lived through before. You built a wall, the monk finally said. I understand. I built one too once. 3 houses tall. And you tore it down? Farid asked, half mocking, half desperate. No, said Devarim. I discovered it was never a wall against poverty. It was a wall against a feeling. And you cannot wall out a feeling with houses, any more than you can block the wind with a closed fist. The wind finds the gaps between your fingers. Farid felt something in his chest tighten, the way it does when a stranger says the thing you have never let yourself say to your own reflection. He wanted to argue. He found, to his own surprise, that he didn't have the will to. That night, unable to sleep in the monastery's plain guest room, no silk, no attendants, only a straw mat and the sound of wind moving through the dry garden, Farid found himself walking the corridors until he came again to the small courtyard where Devarim sat, even at this late hour, apparently needing nothing from the darkness but the darkness itself. How much is enough? Farid asked. He had never asked anyone this question before, not even himself, not in these exact words. It had always come out sideways, disguised as ambition, as planning, as the next deal. But standing there in the cold, stripped of his caravans and his warehouses and his silk, it came out plain and small, the way a real question sounds when it finally escapes the noise a person builds around it. But what Farid didn't expect was how long Devarim would let the question sit in the air before answering. The old monk closed his eyes. When he opened them again, he was not looking at Farid, but past him, toward the hill, toward something Farid couldn't see. You have already had it, Devarim said. You just didn't stay. That answer confused Farid more than it satisfied him, and he pressed further, growing almost angry now, the way people do when a truth is circling closer than they can bear. That isn't an answer. Tell me the number. Tell me the amount that would finally let me rest. And here is where Devarim gave him the 7 words. He spoke them slowly, the way you set down something heavy and precious at the same time, and then he said nothing else. He let the words stand alone in the dark, and he let Farid carry them the way you carry a lit lamp through wind, carefully, both hands cupped around the flame, unsure if it will survive the walk home. Enough is a decision, not a number. 7 words. Farid stood there a long moment, the desert wind moving past both of them, and something in his chest that had been clenched for 30 years loosened, just slightly, like a fist unclenching in sleep before the person waking even realizes it happened. He understood, standing there, that he had spent his whole life waiting for a quantity of gold to produce a feeling, when the feeling had never once, in the history of any man he had ever known, arrived by that road. He thought of his father, bowing his head to the moneylender, and he understood, perhaps for the first time, that his father's shame had not been about the debt. It had been about believing that the debt defined him. Farid had spent 30 years trying to out-earn a feeling that gold was never built to cure, because the feeling had never actually been about money. It had been about safety, about worth, about being seen as enough by a boy who had once gone hungry and decided quietly that he would never let anyone see him as small again. The number in his head had never been a destination. It had been a moving target, invented by fear, and fear does not know how to say enough, because saying enough would mean it had done its job and could finally rest. That merchant is you. Every time you refresh your banking app, hoping this time the number will finally make you feel safe, and it doesn't, and so you tell yourself it will feel different at the next number instead. That merchant is you every time you measure your worth against a neighbor's car, a friend's house, a stranger's vacation photos, as if their number could somehow tell you the truth about your own life. That merchant is you every time you postpone rest, postpone joy, postpone the dinner with your children, promising yourself you'll be present once things are stable, as if stability were a place you arrive at rather than a decision you make. This is the one idea I want you to take from tonight, and I want you to let it be the only one, because trying to fix everything about your relationship with money at once is how people give up by Tuesday. The idea is this: sufficiency is not a number. It is an internal decision about when to stop measuring your safety by your bank balance and start measuring it by your actual life. Attachment says, I will be safe once I have more. Sufficiency says, I will decide today what safety actually requires, and I will stop letting fear write checks my peace can't cash. Nothing external has to change for that decision to be made. That is the strange, uncomfortable, freeing truth hidden inside Devarum's 7 words. The decision comes first, the peace follows, not the other way around. So how do you actually practice this, starting tonight without becoming reckless or naive about real financial responsibility? Here are 3 small, honest steps. First, tonight, before you sleep, write down 3 things money cannot buy that you already own. Not things you wish you had, things you already hold. It might be a friend who answers the phone at midnight. It might be your health this year, right now, imperfect but working. It might be the particular quiet of your own kitchen in the morning. This isn't a gratitude exercise for its own sake. It's evidence, written in your own hand, that your life already contains value. Your bank statement cannot measure and cannot take away. Second, choose one number, just one, that you have been silently chasing. Whether it's a savings goal, a salary, or simply more than I have now, and ask it a direct question. What do I believe will change inside me when I reach you? Write the honest answer. Most people discover the answer is a feeling: safety, respect, freedom, and feelings are not actually stored inside numbers. They're stored inside decisions, relationships, and daily practices you can start building today at your current number without waiting for permission from a bigger one. Third, the next time you feel the old fear rising, the urge to check your accounts, to compare, to buy something to quiet the noise, pause for 10 breaths and ask yourself Devarum's question in your own words. Is this fear about survival? Or is it about an old story I'm still trying to outrun? You don't have to solve the story tonight. You only have to notice it. Noticing is where every real change begins. Farid left the monastery 3 days later, once his horse had healed, and he rode back toward his warehouses and his ledgers and his 11 farms. He did not give it all away. He did not become a monk. That is not how the story ends, and it's not really the point. What changed was quieter than that, and slower, and more lasting. He began eating dinner with his sons twice a week, and turning his ledgers face down on the table while he did. He began giving a portion of each harvest to families in his province who had once stood, as his father had stood, with their heads bowed before a debt they couldn't pay. He still worked, he still built, but the wall he had been constructing his whole life stopped climbing higher, because he had finally stopped mistaking it for shelter. Picture him now, years later, an old man himself sitting at dusk on the porch of his house. Not the largest house he ever could have built, but the one he chose to keep. Watching the light change on the hills the way Devarum once watched it change on the stones of that quiet garden. He is not counting anything. His hands are simply resting in his lap. And somewhere, in the voice he still carries with him, the old monk's words return, the way certain sentences return to us for the rest of our lives, quietly, at exactly the moments we need them. Enough is a decision, not a number. That is the sentence I want to leave with you tonight, because it may be the only inheritance that matters. Your bank balance will rise and fall for the rest of your life, shaped by forces far beyond your control. But the decision about what enough means to you, that belongs to you alone. And no market crash, no comparison, no fear from your past can make that decision for you, unless you let it. If this story gave you even one moment of peace, there are more waiting for you here. More merchants, more monks, more quiet roads where old fears finally get named out loud. Next time, I'll tell you about a king who traded his crown for one night of sleep and what he asked for in return when he woke. Walk gently, hold loosely.